Hi, I'm Jason with Straight Line Performance. Today we're with a brand new 2021 Lynx, and what we're going to do is going to show you how to take apart the P-drive and QRS clutches. We're going to install a complete straight line clutch kit from the end to the beginning using all of our professional tools and show you all the tips and tricks on how to do it. So it's going to be a great little video. It'll help everyone in the future. So let me get into it and I'll show you how it's done. Well, let's get into the P-drive and QRS complete clutch kit install. So we've got our brand new Lynx we talked about, same as any of the Skidoo Gen 4 stuff out there. So step number one, we got to get the belt off. This factory comes with this nice little tool here. You're screwing that into the belt adjuster. That will take the belt off. Screw it in so you got plenty of extra give so you can get the belt up and over. One thing about it is definitely there's no reason to be nice to it because it is tight. It's hard, just got to work it out of there. Take the adjuster back out. And then we're going to use the other side of the adjuster instead of threads. We're actually going to use the same side here. But we're going to use the torque side, and that's going to adjust right on the bottom here or the top as this spins. And we're going to loosen up the adjuster here so that we can actually spin the adjuster off. So we get the adjuster as far off as we can. It'll become loose. It's a little bit of a hassle here, so sometimes we actually got to pop it off somewhat to get it off. This is normal. Get it off nice and easy. The next thing, you have basically a shim washer that's on there that rides on there to protect it. Well, now we got the adjuster off. We've got our washer off. We're going to use the Straight Line Performance tool. It's the 151-107. It works on all the QRS, on any of the Lynx or the Gen 4. So it's a great tool to use, real simple. So installing, just go past the washer here a little bit, grab your wrench, and what it'll do is it's going to tighten up the rubber. I would say very similar to like a bolt plug, nice and tight. No need to go too far because it is not coming out. You're going to put the shim over, compression washer, and the handle. Center it, and then you just give it a little touch. So you'll notice the sheave here, it's actually going in. You only need to go in just so it breaks it right there. There's no need to crank this all the way in. As soon as it breaks the plane, the spring tension is off. So we're good right there. Now we can get into, we're going to use the Straight Line Performance ratcheting wrench on the backside. So we'll get in and show you how to remove those basically pesky little torque nuts on the backside right now. Let's get the ratcheting wrench in there. Put it in. The Torx bit are super strong. It really helps to put your finger on the backside so we're not slipping out. And then just wrench it on and hold it in, and they will come out. There is Loctite from the factory, so it does take a little extra effort to break. Don't back them out too far. Get about a 1/4 inch, and then you're gonna have to rotate to the next one. Do the same thing, break it loose, and then take it out. And basically repeat all 4 until they come out. Sometimes when you're using the ratchet wrench, if you can just down in here, this ratchet wrench sometimes will hit the back side of the bearing. So if we are getting them real loose and we're having a little bit of a problem, you can back the tool off a little bit and you'll notice they go in. That'll give you a little more room. Then be careful. Obviously we don't want to drop it. So we'll get all 4 of these out and go in to get that helix out of there. Get down to the last one. One of your big benefits on this tool, though, that helps a ton, is not being able to have to remove this entire QRS assembly, especially when you're dealing with reverse gears, multi-complex stuff that's in that chain case. This allows you to do it right on the machine without touching anything on the other side. Get the last one out. Take the compression tool, just back it off. We're off. You now have your helix and your spring. It's good for now. We'll go get the new parts here and we'll get them installed. All right, we've got the helix and spring off from the QRS. Inside here, you're gonna notice there's a washer. Sometimes you just give it a tap on the floor, the washer will come right out. That's a slippery washer in there, so it goes in the inside of the helix right here. The new straight line spring will go right in. And one big thing here I want to point out is we have open cutouts and shallow cutouts here with ramps. So this part right here does not go in the rollers. The part with the reverse notch, and it's shallower. So we only have 2 rollers in here, as you can see. We've got to make sure that the rollers go into the shallow notch with this reverse gear. So that's really critical. If you put it in the wrong one, you're going to wreck the helix and the clutch. So let's get it in the right one. Set it in here. We still have our tool installed, so we can put our compression, our spacer, and our clamp, and we're going to crank this down. Try to get it nice and centered so it makes it easy as it goes in. Get it in the right groove, and then it just goes in very simply. You do want to be as careful as you can when it's going in so that we're not wrecking any of the bushings or anything. The back side of the sheave here, you can actually hang on to that as you're bringing it in. And you'll be able to feel when the helix just touches that, because it'll push it open a little bit, just like when we were trying to get the tool itself to break the nuts loose, so the bolts on the back side. So go ahead and crank that in, adjust so you can feel it right there. So that's good. Now we can move on to use that ratcheting wrench to put it together. So just as a reverse, we actually took out the Torx nuts. We're gonna reach back there, you can put them in. You gotta feel for those 4, basically the studs, we'll call them, right on there. All right, the bolts are a little bit of a hassle to get in there. You kind of got to feel it with your fingers, get them good. Grab the wrench itself, reach in there, basically reverse it every time, start tightening them down. Sometimes it's easier to just put the bolts in about halfway so you've got a little bit of movement. You know, the helix is floating in there, so you don't want to put one all the way tight. If it's a little crooked, it's gonna be harder. So, you know, get one started, rotate over, grab another one, and basically work all 4 of these in, just like that. Work the next one in, and finish the install. All right, time to work on the P-drive primary here. So works with all the links that we've got out there from 2017 and all the Skidoo. So first tool you need is you need a holder. We've got our Straight Line Performance holder right here. So got a couple support cushions that are on here. They're going to line up perfectly right around this dampening ring, and you're going to want to rest it right on the back side of this helix nicely in here. So a good support. So typically we could try with a gun. It's not necessarily the right way to do it. We're going to give her a shot. You can hang on to it, pop the bolt out a little bit. Always, if you can, do it by hand, because in the center here there is threads. We want to make sure that we don't yank the bolt out and then try to cross thread as it's coming out. So try to do everything you can by hand. Spin the bolt out itself. Move on to our P-drive puller here. So best to grab some lube here if you can. Just a little bit on the tip itself and on the threads before it goes in. Get it nice and tight. Go back to the impact here if we can use it again. Hold this nice and firm as you do this so nothing bounces or scratches. Give her a crank and boom, it'll pop off nice and easy. So at that point, take the puller back out and we can pull the P-drive out of here. So nice and easy. We got it out. Let's get over to the bench and show you how to take this apart now. All right, we just took the clutch off here. Step 1 on the P-drive is we got to split it. So leave the puller in with plenty of thread in it. Take the hammer, you're gonna have to give it a good hit. And what that'll do is that's gonna bust it apart. So now it's actually spinning in here. So big thing you wanna look at is there's actually the alignment marks there. We got the arrows here dot here, and on the back side here, we actually have a marker right there. So keep these in mind. You know, make sure you should check them before you take it apart. At that point, you can take your puller out. Use the impact. We're going to take the top dampener off. That'll come out. So now we basically just have our spring that we're going to deal with right now. So that gets us into the next tool that we've got. So this is our compressor that we have right here. So it'll come with all these components. To do the spring, you need this compressor to start with. So this threads into the base just as the puller does. Nice and tight. Little example. So here's our spring compressor, machined out nicely, got some cutout grooves so that we can get right in here. You're gonna be able to see there's a circlip right inside here. So we've got to get that out. So what this will do is give us some compression here with the capability to do that so we get the spring out. Give it a turn, and all you want to do here is break this compression so that you can see the circlip right in here. So now we can get it out. So typically use a screwdriver or a pick. Everyone's got their opinion here, but we're going to just pop that out of there. All right, use the pick. We could pop it out here. What's nice on the tool is you can go around to the back side here. We can keep grabbing it, get the pick out. Our circlip is out. Back the tool off. So you're noticing here, it's turning. So we can actually tighten that, which is great. So some of these, you're gonna have to actually hold it or crank it down, and this will allow you to get it out of there. So we'll go in there and give her a little snugness here. So on here, we pull it out. There's our keeper, spring cup, and our P-dive spring. So now that we have this all apart, we can actually have the center can come out too. And we're able to install our new weights in here at the same time too. So there's another way when we put it together, we'll show you how to do the weights, but since we're doing a complete clutch kit, we're gonna do it this way to show you. So our next step here, let's get our weights out there and get the new straight line weights in. All right, we're getting into the clutch weights here. First thing you need to do is do the side bolt here that holds the main pin that's going to take out the clutch weight. So a little trick we use at the shop here, you just loosen it up, not all the way. So if you did, to give you a quick example here, you could take it all the way out. I'll show you. So that is the last of the thread. So you can see we have about this much thread before it comes out. You can put it in. Give yourself at least half of those threads. And you can give it a little tap. And it will pop the back side out here for you. Loosen it up just a little bit. Give her another tap. And you can keep doing this until the pin will actually come out. So it's a great little system. There's your pin. And there's your bolt. We got our weight out. Now that we've got the actual clutch weight out, the factory here has the tool that we used on the clutch. So it goes right into the pivot bolt here. Break the pivot bolt loose. And that'll allow you to split the clickers apart and the clicker adjuster. So we're going to take all these parts out of here for the new straight line adjustable weights. So we're going to switch over to the new weight here. It's all set up. This one actually had a couple magnets in it. These could take either the magnets or in the kit here, we've got nuts, the bolts, the washers, and what's really neat is they come with the pivot bolts in here too, and a wrench for tuning. So they're all the parts you're going to need. So in this particular setup kit here, we're actually going to be using one of the small bolts and a couple of the small washers here for the install. So the main step here, put the washers on, set them in the hole. And then each instruction kit, which is really nice, is going to give you where each nut, bolt, washer is going to go, pivot bolt, clicker as we go through this. So it's a great little system. It's really easy for you to do. All right, we're getting our P-drive adjustable weights put together, getting each washer, nut, and bolt set where they want to. We got to get an extra washer on this one here. Set them up real quick and easy. Right to the specs that each clutch kit is going to come with for you. I'll tell you where to put them. Tighten them down really nice. So get some Loctite on these when you do the production ones. All right, now that we've got our bolts in there, we're going to put our clicker in. We got that set up. We've got a side washer on there. And we actually have the one that does the clicker adjustment. It goes on this side here. Then we can grab our pivot bolt. This is the factory one. This clutch kit actually is going to use one of the straight line pivot bolts, much smaller. So it's a lighter system for this particular kit. That screws in. Tighten it down. So one thing we're going to look at here is we've got on the back side, this is your clicker adjustment, and then you have numbers in here. So we're actually going to set this on position number 3. So if you loosen the pivot bolt, open it up. And what's interesting here is we've got a 2 and we've got a 4. 3 is actually the dot or the dash that's in there. So we're going to line up this hash mark, the indent, and the straight line weight, and that'll be number 3 on there. So it's the only one that really don't have a number. So nice thing about the straight line weight too, the kit itself comes with a nice wrench, matches our pivot bolts, put it together, tighten it up nice, spin her around, set her back in, put the pin back in, holding bolt, and tighten it up. And then we're just basically going to repeat the same identical setup for each one, and we'll start putting this back together. All right, now that we've got the clutch weights in, they're all set to the proper specifications. We take the center, drop that back on. So now you're going to have each one of these rollers in here need to be in the center. Pick the weights up. We'll hit the center so they fall right in there, and it'll drop in. Remember, we want to make sure that we've got this arrow lined up here with the notch and on the bottom of the notch. Now that we've got the center on, we're going to put the spring in. One of the big things with the spring on the P-drive, you know, it's got an open-ended spring here, you'll see. So when we go to drop those in, we've got our cup. We want to make sure that there's nothing in the cup here. So when you put it together, it can still slide on there. We don't want to have any biting actually on the end of the spring. So you put the cup on, got to put your clip on, and then the spring installer. So everything's a little crooked here, as you can see. So it's good. That's why the spring installer needs to be a nice machined piece to put it together. Put our handle on, screw it down. It's going to be a little crooked as you're going in. You're going to have to adjust it as we go down. Straighten it out a little bit. It's not going to be uncommon to have to move it slightly. All right, when you get it cranked down, you'll be able to see your ring again right here. So we'll just take the circ clip part we've got, the locking ring. We've got to drop that in. Sometimes you can do it with your fingers. That's why it's nice to have the 2 openings. Push it in, and you'll hear it clip. Use a little screwdriver to help out if you need to. Drop it in. Make sure on both sides here, it's locked in. Can undo the tool. We've got our spring in there. Take the top off. At that point, we've got her all ready to roll over there. You can take your tool out, undo the top. We're back to the dampening ring. Set that back on. Gonna line it up. Again, at this point right now, we want to make sure that our arrows we've got an arrow line up, a dot, and the bottom's got the tick, so I'm gonna line all of them up. So we've got all 3 lined up. The dampening ring is on, square. You can pick it up on the bottom here, and then you can hand start your torques on here so we can get them all in there so we don't have no cross threading. To get them started, we can get them snugged up here. All right, we got the governor cup on. Now we've got a torque, and we want to make sure you torque in the right sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cross it. We're at roughly about 40 foot-pounds of torque. Torque them all down in that sequence. Now I've got it all torqued down. Clutch is ready to go on. I'm going to show you one last thing here, which is good. So now that we've got it all back together, we've got our clutch kit installed. We can go back to the compressor tool. One last useful item here. So what we're going to do is, we've been out testing. We're going to try something. We want to add a little weight to one of the tips or one of the bases. The tool goes on like this. Make sure you see that goes down right on these pins, which is great. You can put the nut handle back on, and you'll be able to crank this down. What'll be really nice is you can be able to take your weights in and out now. So that's what's nice about this accessory tool you get. So you'll be able to change the weights without actually tearing it all apart again. So let's get this apart, get it back on the sled here. We've got our clutch kit installed on the P drive here. One thing to notice is down on the shaft way in here, it's got a flat spot. You want to make sure that when this goes on, the primary, we match up that flat spot there. So usually you can feel it when it goes on. It'll spin, and you'll be able to find that spot where it just clicks in there. So I get there right in here, it'll lock on. That's what you want to do. Put the bolt back in. Hand do that bolt again so that when we go through the inside of the clutch there, we're not doing any cross threading. Then you got the last part that'll go into the crank. Final setup here. We get back to our holder. We're going to be lining that up right into the holes and resting it nicely against that QRS. Torque wrench. Get it torqued to spec, which is typically somewhere between a 78 and 80 foot-pounds of torque. Get it set up. And we're set. We now have the P drive and the QRS. We're basically down to our last setup here. Let's get a belt back on and adjust it. As we're getting the belt on there, one thing we're going to need to do, put our tool in, open up that secondary, allow us to get the belt all the way on there. Make sure we're putting that belt on there, that there's an arrow on that belt I can show you. The arrow has to go in the direction that the belt is actually running. So take out the adjuster. Kind of work it around a little bit here. Then get to the top again. Now we've got the last step here is to set our belt deflection. So that's what this is here. So that'll be able to crank in. You've got the one jewel that'll come in your kit. So we're going to just adjust it up in there so that it gets somewhat tight on there. So one thing that I like to do quite a bit is to kind of work the belt a little bit, and I can pick it up and I'll be able to spin it barely. Takes some pretty good force. You want it to be nice and tight. So these cords, we see a lot of stuff that says, well, you gotta have it right on this line right here. Not necessarily are. Belts have different widths, ODs, IDs, there's quite a bit. So the height on here will change depending upon the belt that you have. So having it nice and tight, I like to have them to the point where you can pick up the back of the sled, it will spin the track, but it's not going to drive away. You set it down, it's tight. So the tighter the belt, the better off you're going to be with any performance clutch kit we got. So now that we've got that last set right there, I want to make sure everything's nice and tight. It's got it on there. Go ahead and tighten up the lock nut on there. Got the lock nut tight, and we are set to go out and enjoy this clutch kit.